Is Dihexa safe? In this video, I'm going to show you how you can safely and effectively use Dihexa as an adjunct to your cognitive performance. I'll also show you where it's not safe and where too many people may use it for too long and overexpress some of the synaptic benefits of Dihexa. What you'll learn by the end of this video is exactly how to take it, the dosing that's proper, and then I'll also dive deeper into what Dihexa does. So let's jump in. Okay, so Dihexa is very interesting, and it's been studied for years, and one of the things that Dihexa was developed for was Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease. Now, there's a research team out of Washington State University, and they had NIH funding to uncover potential treatments for Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease. Currently, there's treatments for Parkinson's that are pretty old and outdated, and there hasn't been a lot of massive innovations on the drug development world. And Alzheimer's disease, nothing's really moved the needle for it either. And so what they found in the animal models, they found that there was no toxicity in utilizing this peptide. They even found higher levels when humans started taking it. They couldn't determine any kind of toxic accumulation. Now, that's one of the benefits of peptides, is these little protein structures, when your body doesn't need anymore, your body just metabolizes it and it's alleviated. The benefit of Dihexa, and one of the big breakthroughs and why this is such a powerful peptide for your brain, is due to the fact that it can bypass the blood-brain barrier and get right into the parts of the body that we're trying to heal, primarily the brain. And so early clinical usage, what they found is that these regenerative and functional medicine clinics, they're able to see enormous benefits even after the funding was stopped on this beautiful peptide. The work kept going on, and clinics like my own and several of my colleagues, we've been using this peptide since 2013, 2014, and we've seen enormous benefits. And we've also seen the safety profile be incredibly robust. So let's talk about some of the issues. So the first thing with Dihexa is it's not toxic. It's not going to develop this toxic accumulation, but some of the concerns are if you take too much. And when I mean too much, that would be like if you're taking 30, 40, 50 milligrams continually, you may have an overexpression of some of the synaptic activity. Now, we don't know what that could relate to, but it could lead to more neural overstimulation. So it's kind of like, I don't know about you, but sometimes if I'm at a concert, after about an hour, hour and a half, depending on the music, I'm like, okay, I'm overstimulated. I want to get out of here. Theoretically, you could do the same thing if you're using too much Dihexa for too long. And so this is where we're always big fans of cycling this. Unless you've got a neurodegenerative disease like Parkinson's disease or Alzheimer's, Dihexa is really important to do cycles of. A lot of times you don't need to take it on a long-term basis. But the other thing that we like to do for increasing the safety profile is to stack it with a peptide like BPC-157. BPC-157 has been shown to be very neuroprotective. It also creates more angiogenesis, so you get better movement of blood and better movement of nutrients in the brain. We've also found that you can add thymosin beta-4 because thymosin beta-4 activates stem cells in your brain. So Dihexa, we recommend maybe a 60-day to 180-day cycle would be the longest, where you take it 5 days out of the week, you take 2 days off. That seems to be a really good cycle. I couldn't find anything in the literature that showed where there was adverse events outside of people who had contaminated products. But once again, if you're really concerned about safety, then you want to make sure it's a prescriptive-based peptide like Dihexa. So make sure you're working with a team that can prescribe this peptide to you with the right dosing and the right instructions, and they get it from a compounding pharmacy. That's the real critical thing for safety. So here's one of the clients that came in and they were concerned. They had a traumatic brain injury and they said, look, I know you guys do a lot of work on the brain, but I can't risk damaging my brain. And they've read about Dihexa. They found that, the way that this molecule is structured, it allows it to easily pass through the blood-brain barrier and access this synaptic activity in the brain that was missing after the TBI. So what we found with this patient is that by adding in BPC 157, we had him on NAD, so neuro NAD. There's a little bit of eucalyptus and some oxytocin, and then the CoQ10 for some mitochondrial support with another peptide called SS31 that repairs the mitochondrial walls, which is really critical if you've had a TBI. What he found is that his systemic inflammation started to drop. He noticed better mental clarity, and this was a very successful executive who had a skiing accident, hit his head, and he went from, being one of the sharpest guys in the company to not remembering very small details on some of the developments that they were involved with. And it concerned him. But we found within 60 days, he was able to regain that same cognitive clarity. He found he was more creative, and he found Dihexa put him in a better mood. And so based on his medical history, we just had him do the cycles of 5 days on, 2 days off. But we had him do it up to 180 days, and there was no adverse reaction. So Dihexa in general, it's very safe when you work with a trained provider who understands peptides. It's very safe if you source it from compounding pharmacies that have all the licensing that's needed so that there's oversight there. And then the third thing is you want to make sure that if you dose it properly and cycle on and cycle off of it periodically, you're not going to have that overexpression of some of the synaptic clefts and some of the firing of the neurons that could lead to excitability. And so generally speaking, as long as you monitor it, you run your blood labs, you work with the right team, Dihexa can be one of the safest nootropics or safest supplements you can use for your brain. And it's a phenomenal molecule because of the amount of research that's actually been done. If we go back to the University of Washington, what they were finding is they were getting such good results in their clinical trials, but when the NIH pulled the funding, they were left empty-handed, and they were so close to having this beautiful, go into phase 3 clinical trials. But on the flip side, it may be better because now we can use it in its natural version. You know how sometimes with pharmaceutical companies, they want to take the molecule that compounded naturally in your body and manipulate it in a way or add things to it. Sometimes leads to more side effects. But in the case of Dihexa, Dihexa has been a peptide that I've loved. And if you're looking for ways to maximize the use of Dihexa, then you're going to watch my next video on what it's used for. And I'm Regan Archibald, founder of East West Health. I'll see you in the next video.